Our second presenter is Healey Koch. Healey graduates with a BFA in Film, Animation, and Video and an AB in Computer Science. His capstone project is supervised by RISD's Christy Caracas and Brown's Thomas Skouros. Welcome, Healey.
All right, let's get this road on the show. Thank you all so much for coming. It's not quite as dramatic being here over Zoom as it is in an actual auditorium, but I'll do my best to give a rousing presentation anyway. As some of you may know, my name is Healey Koch. I'm from Seattle, and I'm a dual degree student who studied animation at RISD and computer science at Brown. Some of you may be surprised to see me here today. After all, the rest of my cohort did their capstones last May, and my name was even printed on the same brochure they were on. What gives? Well, that's a very good question. Maybe the best question I've ever been asked. And the truth is, nefarious forces conspired to stop me from giving that presentation. Oh, yes. Unfortunately, all those nefarious forces came from me. I just didn't really want to do it. I'm very lazy. You watch enough capstones and you start to see a pattern in how these things go. I came in, I learned a lot, I had some hardships, but I accomplished something spectacular, and this presentation will be a tearful goodbye while I move on to something even more spectacular. I don't mean to talk down on any of these. I was moved by every single presentation I saw last year, and I was moved by AMQ's presentation this year. They're clever, they come from the heart, and it's a genuine joy to celebrate the culmination of all the hard work that I saw my friends go through over the past 5 years. My life has never really felt like that, unfortunately. To me, life just happens, and then keeps happening, and then you're there. There's no grand story I can tell about how my time in the dual degree program went down. I didn't become a rock star. I became, as you are about to see, a big fat whiner. I started my CS degree a year late, was sent home due to COVID along with everyone else at the end of freshman year, was sent home again a year later for a gap semester because I injured my hands, and then I watched as everyone I knew and loved graduated while I stayed behind to finish up school. By my count, this last part has now happened twice. And now I'm here, delivering this capstone to you, a soon-to-be graduate. That isn't to say there's no story I've been able to tell about my time here. Like Batman, the best ones involve me sitting in the dark, brooding about what might have been. And also like Batman, for all 5.5 of my years here, I have donned a special suit at night as a symbol of what this city needs. Disappointing, misshapen, and surprisingly short. My time is Scrody. I knew very little about Brown, RISD, and Rhode Island in general before I got here. I thought Rhode Island was made up, and in particular, I thought the term New England was invented by H.P. Lovecraft. Turns out it's not. But one thing I did know is that RISD's hockey team was called the Nads, and I also knew that their mascot was a giant walking penis called Scrody. And when I had arrived on campus in my freshman year, the hockey team was looking for a new Scrody, a Scrotege, if you will. And I, being the hotshot go-getter stud that I am, took on the mantle. Nobody asked me to do this, and people often ask if I was paid to do it. I was not. I did it purely for the love of the game. Rain or shine, through disease, stress, or uncertainty, I stood erect, walking proudly around hockey rinks, riling up our fans, and making the parents who brought their small children to the games deeply uncomfortable. I'm so sorry you brought your kids to a Nads game. I think that's more on you than it is on me. You make a lot of friends wearing a penis costume. I recommend it if you have social anxiety. It's an automatic conversation starter, and surprisingly, the only people who get mad at you for wearing it are university administrators. Hello, everyone. A few games in, I made friends with people who had, also of their own accord, decided to commentate on a few of the Nads games. That evolved to us filming some footage of the games, which had snowballed into a whole documentary about the Nads where I was a man-on-the-ground interviewer, still suited up. My go-to tactic was to go up to people and say the phrase, "What do you think of controversial issues?" We got a variety of answers, but the common through line was that we did not get a single second of usable footage out of it. They told me this was a pretty bad idea, and I thoroughly agree, which is why I kept doing it. My foundation year was pretty normal freshman year stuff. I did my work during the day, moonlit as Scrody at night, cried an average amount, and made some horse shit, got sent home for COVID, and slowly got weirder the longer I was inside, which is strange because before then, I was pretty normal. The real trouble started the next year. Before I get started, do we have any gamers in the audience? You can raise your hand, fellas. There's no shame in it. Okay, that's great to hear. Everyone who has your hands up, you need to quit right now. If you don't believe me, hear my tale of woe. When I came back to school for sophomore year, we were all still in the COVID lockdown where wearing masks was mandatory, and twice a week we had to go to the gym to get COVID tested. The first time I went up to the person who was going to swab my nose, and he told me to blow my nose, which, being the good rule follower that I am, I did. I did not have the foresight to take my mask off first. The guy just stared at me like he just saw me shit myself. I really hope he's forgotten it by now, because I clearly haven't. This was, above all else, a really bad time. I was inside for what felt like weeks on end. Since all classes and all my hobbies were on the computer, I basically didn't spend any time not on the computer. This does not lead to good things. There's two parts of what happened next. The story I told my parents was that I was just working too hard, I was too good at school, and I was programming too much. This is all true on some level. I am so good at school, I program so much, and I'm really good looking too. But the part I leave out is that when I talk to my parents, is I was also playing video games very badly for about 8 hours straight, went to bed mad because I was losing, and woke up to my left thumb screaming in pain. Yeah, that's not what you want to have happen. The winter break rolled around, and I was told to rest my left hand so it'd get better. I rested it for about a week, and since it wasn't getting any better, I decided, you know what, a little more gaming couldn't hurt, and woke up the next day with my right thumb in immense pain. If you are a prospective dual degree student watching this and you're worried you're not smart enough to get in, don't worry. They don't screen for that. I was told a bunch of things about what it could be from my various physical therapists. My ligaments weren't strong enough, my hands were too weak, and all I needed to do to get better was place my hands in a motorized corn bath and let it jiggle around until the pain subsided. That's real. I'm not making that up. My favorite diagnosis was that I had arthritis, which, no, I didn't. This, for about a good 2 years, ruined my life. I wasn't able to create anything without intense pain shooting through my thumbs. I couldn't draw. I could barely answer my phone without knowing that I was doing some sort of permanent damage. When that summer rolled around, I made the decision to take a gap semester and see if maybe this time rest would fix it. Now, I would like you all to take a moment and think about what sort of things you can do without the use of your thumbs. We all thought about it for a moment? Good, it's nothing. You can do nothing. There's so much nothing you can do that the amount of nothing you'll see yourself doing is astounding. You can walk, you can see, and you can talk. So, things being as they were, I went back to Seattle and took up a job at my old school as an after-school monitor. One of my responsibilities was to watch over the library and make sure the kids weren't playing Counter-Strike loudly and visibly enough for me to get in trouble. One day, there was a table of gay kids sitting behind me and a table of straight sports kids sitting in front of me, and, as middle schoolers are known to do, the sports kids were calling each other gay. I figured this was probably making the gay kids uncomfortable, so I walked up to them and asked, "Can you guys stop calling each other gay?" And one of them said, "No, we're not calling each other gay. We're discussing the football player, Ali Gay." This pulled me out of my monitor mindset, so I went, "Really?" And they pulled up an image of him, and I went, "Huh," and went back to my desk. In my defense, the sports kids stopped calling each other gay. I think they were shocked that it worked. This gap semester was not a great time in my life. I couldn't work, I couldn't draw, and I was losing psychic battles to teenagers. I started going on a lot of long walks to brood. Oh, how I loved brooding. It's amazing to me that I do anything else. For miles I would walk, Lincoln Park blasting in my ears. Brooding. It was at this point that I think I developed an internal attitude of, I'll show them all. Which is not a great attitude to have, all things considered, but it did lead to me walking 33 miles in a single day just to prove that I could do it. I sure showed them. I also contracted COVID for the first time. I have now contracted it 4 times in total. It might be the one thing I love doing more than brooding. Luckily, halfway through the fall, I found a surgeon who knew what was going on with my hands. It was called Declaravenes tendonitis, and it's common in women over 40. As a man under 30, I was a little bit pissed. I got surgery right after Christmas, about a year on the dot since they broke. Apparently, I woke up after surgery telling the nurses that the third Matrix movie is the best one, and that I asked them if I had come out while I was under. I don't have that opinion on the third Matrix movie, and I'm not gay. I don't know why I said that. I was able to come back the next semester, and what a comeback it was. So much had happened socially I had to catch up on. I had been pushed back a year in my RISD studies, and my hands still hurt just that little bit. My brooding days were far from over. In fact, they had only just begun. After a full year of not being able to work at all, I threw myself back into the grind as much as I could. That is not code for playing video games. I was actually working. I programmed servers, I learned about pathfinding, I drew my weird-ass little monsters. One night, I spent 13 hours straight animating, and I was walking home at 4 in the morning and realized that I had worked all the way through 4:20. I do not have the stones to be a stoner, it would seem. To say the next 2 years happened in a blur would be wrong. While I was in them, it felt like they just wouldn't end. I made a bunch of movies, did a lot of CS classes, made a few memories. I won't forget the nights I spent watching junk movies with my RISD friends to distract us from the overwhelming sense of impending doom. And I think fondly of working late into the night with my brown friends, checking in on each other and making sure everybody was awake, fed, and hydrated as we all suffered through the same graphics assignments. We were in hell, but we were in hell together, which is as close to heaven as it gets. But the thing about this is this was just college. Normal, middle-of-the-road college. My gap semester and hand injuries had gotten me so out of sync with what I was supposed to be doing that to be back and to be doing classes felt off. I had developed this chip on my shoulder about not being able to do work and falling behind my classmates, and now that I was back, the chip wouldn't go away. The same internal pressure that made me push myself so hard I broke my hands was back, and it wanted to be fed. I think this edge translated itself into my work. I had made movies in high school, and there were all these fantastical nightmares about prisons and monsters and ambition. They're all 3D animated. They look like this. I don't know which direction it's going to be in, so one of those. You can figure it out. And now they look more like this. They look different, but not as different as I thought they would. Looking at it now, they look a lot more blue. The way making short films at RISD works is you make 2 films in your junior year, 1 each semester, and then a single film over your thesis film a senior thesis film over your senior year for the whole year. This gave me a lot more dedicated time to make these films than I had in high school. These new movies got a lot more personal and ambitious, I think, because of that chip on my shoulder. I couldn't make anything for a while, and now that I could, I had to prove that I didn't fall behind, that I could still make something big and explosive. Every movie had to be the big one. They all came from a place of anger, even if they didn't end up angry. I was angry at things that had happened to me. I was angry at everyone else, and I was angry at the world because ultimately I was angry at myself. Nobody else had broken my hands for me, and the same ambition that broke my hands was the same ambition that drove me to make these films. I dreamed of them as blockbusters and always had to scope them back from what I wanted them to be because I just couldn't complete them in the time that I had. They're very messy. I was cruel to them when I made them, but I'm proud of them now. And then it happened. Despite my best efforts, I reached my 5th and final year in college. Those previous films were the big one, but this one was the big one. I was going to go full throttle on this one. I was going to make it the best film you've ever seen, something undeniable, something that breaks out of the student film mold into being something people would remember. I'll show them. I'll show them all. You know, what every film student thinks. And this is what I made. It's a 10-minute long animated film with CG creatures composited into live-action footage called Revolver Superstar. Here is a 2-minute clip.
And arms down. Right now on the factory floor.
Nobody move! That means you stay put! Got it?
One escaped. Find it, capture it, bring it back. He's not saying anything. Take a squad and make sure he gets it done. You do not have the leeway with me to screw this up.
What? What? This is a cowboy movie.
Well, I hope we all enjoyed that. You heard the wonderful vocal talents of my good friend Jiang and the adequate vocal talents of myself. The quick description for this is a corporate enforcer was sent down to track an angel and instead takes it to the movies. Nobody takes this well. It's been a lot of things over the course of its production. At first, the idea was more about what would you do if one day you woke up and realized you were a murderer, which was an offshoot of what would you do if one day you woke up and realized your life was over. By the end, the idea was more about how do you be better when all you know is evil, and what do you do when you want redemption but know deep down you're beyond forgiveness. This film bears the scars of its development on its sleeve. I'd put off writing it because I was just endlessly stuck on where it should go. I remember during one critique, I had read aloud the script I'd written, and someone said, "You don't know where this is going next because you've written a main character who would not resist getting shot." That is one of the best critiques I have ever been given. I ended up beginning the animation process without a fully finished script, only animating scenes I knew were going to be in it regardless. I don't recommend, do not do this. I know you're thinking about it. Don't do it. It's a bad idea. Animated all of it, rendered all of it, wrote all of it, shot all of it. I even voiced the main character because I couldn't find anybody else who would do a good frayed nerve, barely holding it together thing I was going for, which also may have been because that's just who I was at that point. I was animating it for about 4 months, and I was talking to a friend recently, and they said, when you were working on that film, you were the most sickly I have ever seen you. God, do I miss those days. For the last month of its production, I lived in the animation studio, animating with my comrades in arms as they worked on their own thesis films. Before this experience, I did not think that caffeine affected me. And so, as a little treat to myself, I would dump handfuls of chocolate-covered coffee beans down my gullet. It took me 3 nights staring at the ceiling to figure out that caffeine, in fact, did affect me. I'm proud of Revolver Superstar. The further I get from it, the more flaws I see in it, but I think there is something really interesting in it that I think others can see better than I can. I think I pulled off something cool, but I'm sure everybody does. And then, but this is it. I'm done. I finished my thesis film. It's time for Pastures New, baby. So long, suckers, because I'm getting out of here, and I'm going to move on to nothing. When the film was finished, it was done. But I was not. You see, because of my gap semester, I still had 1 more semester left after I finished my 5th year. I had not graduated yet. In fact, as a nice little nicety, they let me walk the brown graduation. I climbed those little steps. They handed me my diploma with the CS department's trademark winning smile, and then as I walked off stage, someone ran up to me, took my diploma out of my hands, and ran off. I'm not sure how someone is supposed to react to that, so I just went, cool, and sat back down. At least at the RISD graduation, I continued my tradition of editing the RISD president into vile wizard's robes. Which leaves the last semester. I decided to do the semester abroad in Berlin because for the Berlin program, I get an internship, and quite frankly, I did not want to be the only 24-year-old man in a sea of 21-year-old children back in Providence. So off I went. Turns out everyone in Berlin is 21 too. My internship was a product development internship at Finiska, a cat healthcare startup. While there, I was given the assignment of designing and modeling their mascot. For all of my faults, you cannot deny that I did, in fact, do that. Here are a bunch of the preliminary sketches. You can see some are more evil looking, some are cats. All of them are cats. And it ended up turning into this. Early on in the process, I was told to model the mascot on the CEO's cat, Django, who was very important to the story of Finiska, as they said. Which is a good design brief to go off of, because now I know exactly what they wanted, but it also resulted in me asking some questions I didn't think I was allowed to ask, or I wanted to ask them, I did not ask them. You see, as I mentioned, this was a cat healthcare startup, and this was a cat who was very important to the story of that cat healthcare startup, which meant that I only had one question, which I'm sure is the same question many of you have now. Is the cat dead? I don't think so. Everybody talks about him in the present tense. I never asked. It just didn't seem like a right moment. Now, this internship experience is still part of a Brown class. And for that class, we had an assignment where at the start of the summer, we wrote a letter to ourselves. And then halfway through the semester, we would look at the letter and write a reflection of how we felt, how things were going, stuff like that. My friend Dee Dee wrote a beautiful, uplifting letter to herself that was inspiring to read. Here's what I wrote. That little imp was a meme from 15 years ago. If you think it's awful listening to me now, just understand that I have to put up with myself every goddamn day of my life. Jesus Christ. And no, I did not go beast mode. I thought I might. I did not. Turns out I'm Healey everywhere I go. So, what is the takeaway? 5.5 years, ups and downs, films, drawings. What did we learn? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't think I learned a goddamn thing. Whenever I think about what I was supposed to get all out of this, I think about this time when I was 11, and I was at a summer camp with my buddy Cameron and his brother Ryan. We were outside this oversized checkers set, and Cameron was stacking the checkers one by one. And once he reached about 10 checkers high, Ryan would come over and kick his tower down. After 3 times of this, Cameron said, "If you do that again, I'm going to sock you in the teeth." Cameron then rebuilt his tower, Ryan kicked it down, and Cameron socked him in the teeth. I don't know why I remember this. I didn't like that Cameron hit Ryan, or that Ryan kept kicking his checkers, but every step of the process made complete sense given the previous steps taken. My only takeaway then, and my only takeaway now, is, yeah, I guess that's what happens. And at the end of all this, all my years, that's my takeaway now. Yeah, I guess that's what happens. I don't think that's a bleak takeaway. I think it's just what living a life is like. This is the part where I tell you where I'm going next, how I'm so thankful for everyone along my journey, and how the next leg of my journey is going to be wonderful. Half of that is true. I'm very thankful to everyone who's given me support, for Thomas Seguros and Christy Caracas for advising this presentation, and for all my wonderful friends and professors who've been truly delightful every step of the way. But, and I'm going to guess that this is true for many people in the audience right now, I have no idea what is going to happen next. The time after graduating college is famously awful, and I have no idea if the future is going to involve another film, more computer science, or more brooding walks down the coastline. Okay, it's definitely going to involve more brooding walks down the coastline, but the other two are not set in stone. I brought myself here, under horsepower of my own, and now that I'm here, my reaction is, yeah, I guess that's what happens. I made my very flawed way through college, learned some, but not as much as I should have, and now I'm here. But looking back, I'm not sure I would have done anything differently. After all, when the going gets hard, so do we. Thank you so much for your time, everybody.